It should be obvious that it's not possible to be happy without wisdom or some sort of wise influence to inform the way the life goes, or to make, for making decisions, some parameters, some guidelines, but in a wise sense, not just a rule sense. And then the other thing that should be fairly obvious is that it's not possible to be happy without self-knowledge. Self-knowledge comes from self-honesty. Brief story was St. Augustine of Hippo was a great philosopher, doctor of the church, but before that he would be considered a pagan. He was a Manichae. He believed in a philosophy called Manichaeism, which was a radical dualism of good versus evil in a nutshell. But it was a prominent belief system philosophy at the time. But he's depressed, really sad, and full of anxiety because he sees people with this what he considers radical happiness that he didn't have access to, despite the fact that he had admirers and material well-being, and he was a very, very sharp guy, very well respected, had a long-time relationship, a lot of good things in his life, but he was not happy. So a friend of his came and talked to him and did the usual testimony about Jesus the Christ and the source of happiness and all this. It never worked for St. Augustine. So finally what happens to St. Augustine is that he begins weeping bitterly. He falls down in the courtyard. He's driven to an extreme of the edges of what he could handle intellectually, and he was an intellectual powerhouse. So he was driven to the edge of that intellectual fence of who he was. And in his mind, while he was weeping, he heard some children chanting, and they were saying, "Pick up the book and read, pick up the book and read." So he went to a Bible that this guy had left, and he flips this thing open and reads something. And I don't remember what he read, but that passage caused the tumblers to fall inside of him. And that was the beginning of, quote unquote, Saint Augustine. That was his conversion experience. That was his conversion moment. And many, many enlightening moments or conversion moments or whatever you want to call it have those elements of a person who's well formed, and that formation takes them to the edge of who they are. In other words, I can't go any further. This is where I'm stuck. I'm stuck here. Wisdom won't get me past this, really. I can't think my way through it. I can't analyze my way through it. I can't behave my way through it. And so you end up in a wall. You meet a wall that is personally impossible for me or for the person who's experiencing it. Personally impossible to get through that wall.
Hal, I won't argue with you anymore. Open the doors.
Dave, this conversation can serve no purpose anymore. Goodbye.
Hal? 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 Hal?
And the next thing that happens has to have to do with transformation. That's all that can happen, or happiness can't come. There has to be transformation. So you go from formation, put it this way, information, taking in materials, formation, which makes a person with habits, well-informed habits, and then transformation. Transformation is the proverbial cocoon butterfly story. And like the cocoon butterfly story, other people can't help in that process. It has to be the magic of nature in terms of the butterfly. There's the other story, which is, the person who sort of assists the butterfly, seeing the monarch struggling to get out of his cocoon or his chrysalis, and the person kind of just gently opens up the cocoon or the chrysalis slightly so that the butterfly can be free, and then is so dismayed and sad to see that the butterfly is crippled. The butterfly can't function, it can't fly, its wings don't form, and it's weak, and it's going to die. In other words, the person, well-meaning though they were, they assist in a process that has to be hands-off. It has to be hands-off. Nobody's allowed here. Because it's a natural process, it's an organic process, it's a dramatic process. And the outcome is, let's say the outcome's likely, but by no means guaranteed. And so that there is a tendency, as we have in births, where the United States has more C-section births than any country, I think, except maybe Brazil, on the planet, which is, we're going to assist in that process. We're going to help. Whereas there's the wisdom of this, to take it to our process of emergence that we're talking about here. We're talking wise words. And what are wise words for? If it's just coffee table material, it's useless. It's for transformation. Wise words are for a transformative experience, whether that happens slowly in stages, by inches, by fractions of an inch, or whether it happens in the case of like a St. Augustine, where there's a pile-up, a domino effect, where all of the tumblers fall all at once. So that would be a transformative experience. And in St. Augustine's experience, it was from the wise words. But you and I probably would read those wise words and get maybe nothing out of it. That's the way it is, so that's why it's difficult to really say what are wise words, because I'm going to say that the first axiom that we can assume here is that the wise words, like all these patterns, like all 7 of these steps, it's your wise words. I'm not, I can tell you to go read Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. I can go tell you to read Simulacrum and Simulation. I can tell you to read A Course in Miracles. I can tell you to go read the Gospel of John. Or Rudolf Steiner writings, or The Way of Water by whatever his name is, Schenck or whatever. Have you read these, and these are all transformative, spiritually uplifting, informative books. But no matter what it is, the simple reality and the difficult aspect of this transformative process is emergence from a cocoon. And what are we looking for? We're looking for happiness. We're not talking about enlightenment. Because then we get into this thing about enlightenment, and it's kind of like this moment. And that's not really what I'm looking for. I'm going to say that enlightenment is not other than self-knowledge. And self-knowledge will be enlightenment. So again, the more I looked at these patterns, they are informing one another. They inform one another. Wise words have to lead to a deeper sense of what you can know and do know about yourself. So that can come in the form of, I don't know, Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. It can come in the form of somebody coming up to you on the sidewalk and saying something random to you, and you go, what was that all about? It's very unpredictable, but an aspect, like in the St. Augustine story, an aspect of when this will happen is when you are eager for it. For whatever reason, curiosity gets the best of you. Curiosity might even lead to a certain degree of frustration. How can I get there from here? A sense of meeting the wall. What I am, what I know, who I am, who I know, what I know about myself, no longer serves me in the way that it always has. And now, can you have a happiness beyond that? Yeah, you can have contentment. In fact, I'd say that there has to be a certain amount of contentment that is because of patience with this process. The process of self-knowledge, or getting to know who you really are, what you're really made out of. And so I said in the first video that I did on this, that I thought that self-honesty alone would lead to enlightenment. And I think that that's true. It's a real critical, wide-eyed, but not judgmental. Not I am this or I'm that, or I did this wrong or I did this right. It's a wide-eyed, critical look at who I really am. And it's important not to bring a judgmental mind to it, because inevitably we're either not as good as we thought we were, or we're a lot better than we thought we were, or both happening at the same time. But I think it's safe to say that most people don't know what they are at all, and that there has to be a certain amount of peace with that lack of knowledge, self-knowledge. And to be honest with myself, I really don't know who I am. I really don't know what I am. But that's an important question to hold. And just if you wash your hands of that, then you're washing your hands of the big question. And you're walking away from the big question. Now, I think it's important, as self-honesty, as a human being wants, it has the need to know. That's awareness, that's awakeness. So an awake mind, you say to yourself, I want to know who I am. I want to know what this world is about. I want to know what my world is about. So you find wise words. Like for some people, it's like Alan Watts, or for some people, it's Carlos Castaneda. And like I said, for some people, it's their church or a minister. There's definitely, then there's moments of vulnerability that a person has where it can be random, seemingly random events. It can be near misses or direct hits of physical harm. Many, many things can lead to that crystallization moment. And I apologize for being so trite. I don't, let's try to get underneath the trite. As I sit here, I don't know really who or what I am. As I've said in other places, I really don't know or understand how it is, back to that, touching the infinite. I don't really know how it is that I'm moving my hands or stringing together words. So it's important to pay attention to the mystery of what I am. And then it's also important to recognize things that Carl Jung talks about, which would be my shadow, the place where I dump all the stuff that I know that I'm not. Like if I identify with being, I don't know what, some sort of charming person that gets along well with people, you have the shadow side where an antisocial, bitter person who's sort of has self-doubts or a lot of self-criticism, they throw that in a bucket and they never look at it, and that's their shadow. And that in moments of stress or tension, or including good things, bad things, that shadow material will come out and really work havoc on the person, so that they ruin the job interview, or they mess up the relationship, or these different things happen because they're unaware of the shadow. So it's important to make some friends with the dark material, which there's a good bet that if you write down all of your stellar qualities, all your great qualities, you write those all down someplace, and then turn 180 degrees away from that and write the opposite of all those things, chances are that's your shadow. Something like that is going to be your shadow. And that shadow can be a saboteur and come in and undermine your happiness, undermine the things. So it's important to try the best we can to understand our whole self. And that whole self would be one, I can't really understand the full self because that's a transcendent mystery. And then I have things like access by whether it's Freud or Jung or psychologists or spiritual teachers or teachings or books or experiences or a wise aunt or uncle, or something like that. They can tell you things that are enlightening. It can be one-liners, it can be three-liners. It might be an enduring mentor-type relationship with somebody. So where does all this go? Where does all this go? Let's sit with this for 1 second.
Wouldn't it be better to face the issue and take your punishment?
But you don't know what the punishment is. It's not prison or the hangman's rope. I could face that. It's mercy, forgiveness, love.
In a practical sense, I'd say it's important to have, let's say, a bedside companion, meaning a book, or some writings of poetry or something scriptural, like maybe the Tao Te Ching, or, like I said, the Bible, something that you call wise words that you go to regularly. And in terms of self-honesty, it would be when things happen to me in my life that I'd rather shovel away, I'd rather not pay attention to. I said something, I said, wow, did I say that? That seemed kind of cruel, or that seemed kind of insensitive. Or, no, I'm really, really interested. I like this person, I love this person, and yet there's something in you that seems to be out of square with that. Well, don't shovel that aside. All of these small intuitions and these kinds of things are important messages about who we are and the ways that we can adjust. And that's called self-honesty. That's self-study, self-honesty. And that's a critical piece of becoming happy. But the reason we want to know these things is so that we're better attuned to our environment. Only by sort of having a general understanding of who and what I am can I be better attuned to the environment that I'm in, that I function in. And that attunement, as we discussed, is the well-placed wheel hole. It means it spins cleanly without lumps and bumps. So that is a smooth ride. That is happiness. What happens if there's not self-knowledge is that it's easy to confuse victory after victory after victory in life, achievement after achievement, or 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or 4 steps forward, 1 step back. We assume that we are on the road to happiness, as I discussed before. It's an upwelling. It's an upwelling. And that upwelling of spirit can happen in a depressed state. The depressed state is similar to the chrysalis. That's what the butterfly is in. It's sitting. It's like it's all closed in. As I've talked about, the containerization, the lack of expansion. There's a necessary compression that we can use the butterfly emergent as a sort of a symbol for that. But there's a necessary compression in a situation that we've got to have the wisdom to be patient with, a necessary compression. So you don't want to bail out by taking whatever Xanax or whatever these drugs are too quickly. Maybe do St. John's wort tea. I found that mellowed me out pretty good. So be patient with this, your compression and the constriction, and live with it a little bit. Live with that, really what is an unhappy state, because as we said, any of these happinesses, the truism is that you can only be as high as you go deep, kind of a thing. So there is that being patient with the darkness, being patient with things not going correctly. But being patient doesn't mean being indifferent or apathetic. So, and sometimes apathy and indifference can pass for peace, but it lacks this upwelling of spirit. Life is good, and the things that happen in this life are an upwelling. They're coming up from below. They bubble up like a spring. Life bubbles up like a spring. Creative possibilities bubble up like a spring. Our moods, all the functions of our body bubble up in this manner. So this is the movement of life up like this. But as you can see, like, let's take the idea of a bubbling up of a spring. There's a lot of constriction in that, down in the earth. There's, it seeks outlet, it seeks release. So there's vigilance for the beauty and the wonder that life is, the mystery of what life is, to reveal itself. You can't force it. It's not a nut that you can just crack open. And that's another aspect. Anything that has to do with a violent approach to knowing yourself, a violent approach to achieving wisdom. Violence meaning a sort of an acquisitive spirit. Depending on you and your temperament, that could be a good thing. I'm going to say, generally speaking, contentment is part of the process. And if there are people, passionate souls, who are consumed with the need for enlightenment, the need to know themselves, the need to feel the deeper, to understand or experience the deeper secret, all those kinds of things.
Why?
Enlightenment is a curse of civilization. A man who wastes his energy on knowledge is a fool. The more he learns, the more he wants, and the more unhappy he becomes. Tear down the schoolhouses, burn the books, strangle the teachers. Then the world will get somewhere.
Again, that's an individual gig. There's no way that anybody can tell you what exactly that is. You kind of have to put your finger on your own pulse and see if you're violating something in a deeper way, or are you breaking false chains that need to be broken so that you can move on. So, in quick summary, the two are finding wise words and striving for self-honesty. And the thing here is to recognize that striving for self-honesty is a critical aspect of becoming truly happy, so that you can be in sync with your environment. And wise words are, by definition, going to help you know who you are. If those wise words are not helping you know who you are, let's say you're reading the Tao Te Ching, or let's say you're reading a Bhagavad Gita, or let's say you're reading the Gospel of John, or you're doing a Bible study course. If those aren't at least informing you, and in a challenging way, and if those things are not bringing you to a place of self-knowledge, knowing something about yourself, then I'm going to say that you might be on the wrong track, and it's not really functioning as wise words. It might be functioning as something else, but it may not be functioning as wise words.
But what about the answers to all those profound questions you have been asking yourself? Don't you know people have been asking the same questions for thousands of years?
Yes, but doesn't the fact that people have been asking those same questions for thousands of years only go to prove that they can't help asking them?
You know, I find it difficult. I might do a video that actually says these are the sources, or these are good options for wisdom sources, or even self-honesty, cues and means for self-honesty. But for now, I'm going to say it's an individual gig. And if you had homework, I would say the homework would be to just be alert in your environment, beginning today or tomorrow, whenever you hear this, to be alert for those words, those actions, those perceptions, whether it's in a dream or from a random encounter or from something you happen to pick up, that strike you at the root. It strikes you as informative. And be vigilant for that moment. And then to always ask the question, who am I? really? Who am I really? With the, and you have to assume that the who you are is too mysterious to be known in a sentence or a phrase. And if anybody says, I know you, you can know they're wrong because people don't even know themselves, much less other people. So thank you very much. And I will do the last section on Toolkit, and that will be it. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it.